Hello, is this one? Whoa, yes, it works. Okay, so most of you either work here or been here regularly, which means there's a good chance you guys have seen me talk before. And usually this is the part of a talk where I tell some little story and show a few corny pictures and wait for a laugh, and sometimes you guys do and sometimes you guys don't. And then I dive into something technical and I don't know, maybe it's iOS, maybe it's video games, maybe it's both. We're not doing that today because I'm in a crap-ass mood. I am pissed off today. So let's talk about what your QA should do. Is anybody here in QA? No. Oh, good. Well, at least no one here knows what QA actually does do, because it's clearly a mystery to all of us coders, right? So what does QA do currently at most places? I've had the pleasure, most of the time, sometimes not so pleasure, of going to a lot of different sites over the course of my career. And most of the time, the QA process works like this. At the beginning of a sprint, assuming you're doing Scrum or some flavor of Agile, QA writes some test cases. Then they submit them for approval to the development and the business people, and then they wait. And then they wait and wait and wait. And when there's 45 minutes to go in the sprint, the development and business analyst people say, okay, I approved them all because we have to. The process says we have to. The QA people run the tests. They all fail because it's all broken. And it says, you can't call that done. And development says, we have to. Sprint's over. Sorry. And anyway, those test cases were wrong anyway. That, in fact, is why I am so mad today. All right? This is a picture of my family. In the middle, for those of you who can see it, but it's a little fuzzy, is my wife, who is in QA. So, as QA is currently constructed, she is handed, or maybe wrote, a list of manual step-by-step test cases. Now, I have no idea why anyone would interview skilled human beings, choose to hire some and not others, and then tell them to follow a script step by step as if they barely could read or write. We start the interaction with QA by insulting their intelligence. When you insult my wife, you insult my family, it makes me grumpy, and I start yelling in front of everybody. Right? From there, a good QA person will frequently deviate from the script because they will find bugs that are not in it, which we will tell them are not bugs because they weren't in the script, and again insult their intelligence. What else do we do to QA that has me so riled up? What happens when development is late? When development is late, do we tell the developers, well, ship what you got? No. Do we change the ship date? No. We inform the test team that they'll all be working late because their time is not valuable either. And we end up making me angry again. We continually treat the testers and QA as if they are garbage men or our mommies, someone that has to watch over us. And the reason we do this is because they have to, because we keep shipping crap. So what does QA do? QA does our job. If you ship software and you don't think it's going to get the basic stuff done, QA is doing your job for you. Right? But we do it in such a way that nobody in QA is building a career path. We do it in such a way that developer husbands get very, very angry and start ranting in front of all of you. Right? So this is not what QA should be doing. This is not what you hire intelligent people for. Following a list of step-by-step, very specific instructions is something you hire high school interns for. It's data entry, right? One of the apprentices here is reading the software craftsmanship book. Somewhere in there, Pete McBreen says, a software craftsman ships no known defects. Right? But there's another way this is occasionally phrased. This is eighth light, right? We kneel at the altar of Uncle Bob, and we say, oh, wise uncle, what should QA find? And he goes, QA should find nothing. Right? QA should find nothing. A software craftsman should ship no known defects. I really, really like that approach. I really want to like that approach. But there's a couple of problems with that. The first and most basic is that never happens. The best developers on the planet ship defects. Even the phrase no known defect says none you know about. And that's a clue. It's a clue as to what QA should be doing, as opposed to what they are doing. Right? And I have another problem with that, is it takes a job that QA people are doing right now, that despite the fact I just said how much it sucks, is valuable, extremely valuable. If it wasn't for QA, and I am not exaggerating, people would die because of stuff we wrote. And that usually makes my wife mad at me. And there's a final, more important issue. So in the picture again, the one in the middle is my wife. My kids are all in this picture. And when I showed this picture yesterday, someone said, how many kids do you have? And it wasn't until this morning someone pointed out, not all of them are in this picture. One of my kids is taking it. They're going to go to college someday. My wife needs a job. Right? By the way, I want to thank Paul Pagel for letting us take this picture in front of his summer home. It's his little cottage. It's out in Carolina. The problem is QA is finding defects. They're finding tons of defects. We should be finding most of those defects. We should be getting them well before they get to QA. But what the real issue here is, what shouldn't QA find? What do we really mean when we say QA should find nothing? All right? QA should not find a feature that is incomplete. QA should not find a feature that doesn't work. Right? Many of you have probably seen this, some variation on this before. I draw this at every site I go to eventually. The base of it is unit tests. All of you should be writing unit tests for all your code. I'm at 8th Light. I don't really have to indoctrinate you into that church. I should, as an aside, I hope none of you are unfortunate enough to work at a place where they assign testers the task of writing the unit tests. This does exist. It does happen. Obviously, they should not be doing that. What about acceptance testing? Acceptance testing is an interesting thing because we don't always do it. Acceptance testing is something that costs money. It never goes to completely free like a unit test does. I am no slower with unit tests than without. I am always a little bit slower with acceptance tests, and I cannot always justify the upfront cost. The flip side of that is frequently testers are the only people in the damn building who know how the software works. You can't ask the business analysts. They know how it's supposed to work. You can't ask the developers. They only know about the thing in front of them. You ask the QA people, and they'll tell you it doesn't work. So, as we move up this triangle, there's less and less developer involvement. If we move down it, there's less and less testing involvement if there is a testing department or a testing group or people in charge of doing that. Because at every level, if you're writing acceptance tests, if you're writing acceptance criteria, QA are going to be the people that have used the software the most, be it manually through these step-by-step silly scripts, or some automated fashion, or through exploratory testing. They're going to be the ones to tell you that your feature doesn't work the way you think it can. They shouldn't be writing acceptance tests either. If the test isn't being looked at by someone in charge of requirements, then your acceptance test should probably just be something you write in code. It's the simplest way to do it. You should be verifying that your objects that you've unit tested in isolation work together somehow. If the business people are looking, then they should be writing the tests in conjunction with you and someone from QA. Integration testing, though, that's where it's at. And unfortunately, on most projects I see, that's never done. And it's not done by choice. It's not done because of what I talked about before when the 3-week test cycle gets compressed to 1 week because the developers were late. So they skipped that part. And you know who does the integration testing then? The guy who bought it, the software. Right? This series of boxes is from Lisa Crispin's mostly excellent book, Agile Testing. I think it's Lisa Crispin. I hope I named her right. On the left, we talk about automated unit tests. There's no such thing as a non-automated unit test. It's not a unit test if you don't automate it. Acceptance tests, functional tests, story tests, those are always the same thing. They should be automated mostly. And on the right, we have exploratory tests, usability tests, load testing, security testing. The left is your job. The right is QA's job. Anything that could be caught by something on the left, QA should not find. That is your QA should find nothing. QA should be always telling you things like, the requirement works, but... Because here's the thing about automation. It can tell you if it works. It can't tell you it's garbage. We don't know if it's terrible until we get feedback. And this is why on smaller projects, we don't have QA people. It's not just that, of course, they're expensive, because we can make that cheaper. But it's because we know that we're going to have to use customers. We can get that feedback elsewhere if we have to. But if you have a QA department, why wouldn't you get that feedback before the customer? Right? What kind of bugs should QA find? The kind you're not embarrassed by. QA should be finding stuff that you say isn't a bug. They should find that stuff all the time. Which they do, but that's because we're jerks. Because we say things aren't bugs that are obviously bugs. Hey, the cancel button crashes. Yeah, the requirement didn't say implement a cancel button. Oh, really? Because when I close it, the system reboots. Oh, we haven't specified what happened when you close the program. Oh. This stuff, weird things, performance problems. Was just at a site. They have a bunch of QA, and they had a part in their system, which is so generic I could describe every word of it to you, and you wouldn't understand any of it. I'd be giving away nothing. But there was a part where they copied 10,000 items. And it didn't work. They found out a customer wanted to do that. Why hadn't QA ever tried that? They don't have time. They can barely get through their 5,000 manual test cases step by step, one by one. And they're supposed to do it at the end of every sprint. Does not make sense. Terrible usability is something that QA is great at finding. Weird, extreme edge cases. Good testers are good at this. Testers who can only follow a checklist are just anybody. Anybody can do that. Performance problems. And I say they should be finding new features, which is really what a lot of these will be. That's the beauty of it, is if you do all the things, let's see if I go backward. Yes, all the things on the left, all the things on the right can wait. We want QA to be finding a lot of things on the right, and we're only going to classify a few of them as emergencies. If we did our job, if the stuff we shipped was actually done, we don't have to worry too much that it's awkward, it's funky. It's great that we find that out early and we have a chance to adjust to it. We don't have to know. We don't have to stop shipping They should not be finding showstoppers. Has anybody ever worked in an environment where they have limits to where they will fix a defect? And what I mean by that is teams will decide on what bugs they will fix and what bugs they won't. Every team does that. But if you've ever worked on a team that says, for instance, showstoppers and highs have to be fixed, but lows and mediums you can ship with those. Yeah, that's a common practice. Does anybody ever fix the lows and mediums? No. To a customer, 1,000 lows and mediums feels a lot like a high. You should already be delivering good features. You should already be removing the bugs that QA is finding now, that QA is finding because we're not doing our job. And instead, they should be finding a ton of stuff that you don't classify as defects. They go in the backlog. Hey, that's really cool. I'm glad you found it. We will tell the customer we don't support copying 10,000 items now, but we will in the next release. And when they call mad about it, you've already got an answer on the phone. QA is a feature. It is a feature you can pay for. And I realize that I probably made myself sort of take two sides on this, right? I'm saying, oh, well, we disrespect QA. We treat them like their job is meaningless and you don't need it, but you can choose not to have it because it's a feature. Startups cannot afford QA. Their QA is the customer. That's why they need to be able to rely on us to get the left side of that graph done, and done with or without a QA department. They can't afford a QA department. QA is a feature that you pay for, and when you pay for a feature, you respect it. You treat it like a full-fledged member of the team. You don't do things like say, don't worry, we can get this testing done. We'll offshore it to 100 people in a foreign country that doesn't have our minimum wage laws. You can pay for performance testing. You can pay for usability testing. You can choose to do one or the other. Now, that's the thing. If you're the upside down triangle, this is the cost of all these items. We talk about how much you should have of all of them bottom up. The cost is this way. It's why the ones on top get skipped or shaved when there's not enough money for them. That's okay when it's a conscious decision, as opposed to we planned it at the beginning 9 months ago decision. If a QA task is important, it will be done. So we should be looking at this as something that customers pay for when we're working in independent software development, like many of us are, not just the people with the, I don't have an 8th Light shirt on, not just the people with the 8th Light shirts on. Imagine a star right here. Yes, I can do load testing for you. That will cost blah. Where is QA involved? Lots of you, I know, have seen this. Not just the Scrum diagram. I put Scrum on a slide at 8th Light. Sorry. All right. I described this at the beginning. Teams do this all the time. Okay, right here at the beginning of this spiral thing, don't worry that you can't read the words. We'll write the test cases. We'll wait for the thing with the thing. And 15 minutes before demo, okay, can you run the test cases? That doesn't work. And on no planet is it going to work. I continue to meet teams who goes, well, what if the developers just got done a couple days early to let the testers run? And then what? The developers sit around? What are the developers going to do if they're new a couple days early? They're going to start something new. I'm done creating the old bugs. Got to make a few new ones in the last couple days. They're, of course, going to do this. You don't involve QA like that, but they shouldn't be going through manual checklists anyway. You should be doing that. If the way you do acceptance testing is to manually go through it, then you should do it. That's how you know you're finished. QA is involved at every step of the way, more like a consultant. They're checking what the feature does because they know what stinks. They may have suggested many of the features. They may have their own sprint, scrum, agile iteration. this month we're going to get this much usability testing done on it, and we're going to get this much performance testing on it. We're going to do penetration testing. We're going to do all that stuff. And we're going to do it as a separate discipline. We're going to work with the team, but we're not necessarily going to sit and wait for the team. What should QA do? They should do the stuff on the top of the pyramid. I don't know if Eric can see me on TV. I know bullets suck. Integration, end-to-end testing, systems testing, system running everything together. Developers cannot reasonably be expected to take their client-server system, attach 22 different devices to it, all with different browsers and operating systems and everything else, start them all up at random times, throw one out the window, and see what happens. They've got features to finish and bugs to fix. They've got enough work to do, especially since I just gave them work that I accused them of being lazy for not doing in the first place. But that is the kind of thing that testers are great at. Really good ones. I've worked with a few, not just the one I married. I've worked with a few who they'll have their own labs and setups, and you go, what's your test plan? They go, I don't have a test plan. I just mess with it. Meanwhile, the people running the test plans are finding no defects, and the person who just messes with it is just finding defect after defect. It's all broken because they're not following the path of the happy unicorn that's going to go right down the line to all the steps that we know work. They should be exploring. They should be playing. They should be the ones using it more than anyone, probably. Even a customer is probably not going to use your software that much unless it's, I don't know, massively multiplayer online game that people get addicted to. I guess if it's Farmville, you can't have QA people play it as much as the people that are hooked on that do, right? So, I have no idea how long I've taken. This may have been a 3-minute rant. Oh, good. It wasn't 3 minutes. It was like 10. Now, I've done some things that made me happy. I've described a job that if my wife was doing it, she wouldn't be insulted all the time. There wouldn't be arguments because she has to work late because some developer did something stupid. I've described something that is useful and helpful and makes better software and treats everybody like adults. You awake? The problem is I've described a happy land, right? I've described a magical Shangri-La that doesn't actually exist almost anywhere. Now, the good news is many of us in this room can start to help make it happen. We can start pushing in the direction of that happening. What can QA people do right now to start making this happen? I swear, every big company I go to, they have this event. Someone looks at all those manual test cases, and they have the same reaction I do, and say, why are human beings doing all this? And then they go, they should automate that. They should get coded UI and Selenium and Silk Test and Windrunner and I don't know them all anymore. And they should write scripts to automate the entire system through the GUI, through every single test case. And the testers say, why do you hate me more than you did yesterday? You'll never catch up on that effort. It is never worthwhile. There are numerous development teams out there. They've got huge Cucumber suites that go through the browser GUI. And even those, which frequently are not written after the fact in this sort of silly fashion I've described to you, those are written before. Even those are incredibly difficult to maintain. You never catch up. You will be constantly automating the manual steps. Meanwhile, development teams making new steps. You're trying to write more automation. So this is not what QA should be doing now all the time. Knew that on purpose. All the time. They should not decide, all right, I am sick of doing this insulting job. Let's get an automation effort. Good news, guys. 4 of you are going to run manual test cases. 4 of you are going to start the automation effort. The 4 of you doing the manual have to get it done the exact same amount of time. The other 4 have to maintain all the automation scripts. Developers are changing stuff. Good luck, everybody. But you should do some. What could you do today? If you're in QA, you know where the crummy parts of the system are. You know the parts that come up over and over and over again. Every iteration, this is broken. Every single time. Changes in our profession don't come from top-down fiat, because people like me don't get jobs and tell everyone the happy thing to do, because we yell too much. Changes come from the bottom up when teams, QA teams, development teams work together and prove a new approach works. So what can QA do? They can automate a portion. They can point out this part is broken over and over and over again. Every iteration, constantly busted. Here we go again. They can raise it to visibility, and they can force the dev team to put their own practices in place that make that part better, because they're sick of hearing the QA people tell them about it. When it comes to acceptance testing, me and like 4 other people still like Fitness better than Cucumber. Me, Paul, and like 2 other guys that live across the country. The reason we do is because it leans towards an under the GUI approach to writing acceptance tests. Right? It's a little harder to get started with, a lot easier to maintain. If the QA people are constantly bothering the testers, the QA people are constantly bothering the developers with bugging this part of the system again, and you got to fix it right now because their automated patch won't pass, they will write their own automated tests to make sure those don't break anymore. And when that part turns green, you've improved the coding side, and you can start throwing out those tests. Because you could say, you know what, we don't have to maintain this 1,000 tests because it never breaks anyway. All we're ever finding now are bugs in the tests. You can push the development practices in a better way that way. That's what QA can do today to improve the situation. Sometimes, unfortunately, we live in a world where if the world is not going to treat you like an adult, you have to stand up and remind them that you are one. You have to be the one saying, you know what? These people in the other country, in the other time zone that's working while we're sleeping, they can't experiment because they can't ask questions. You know, I need people here. You have to be the squeaky wheel, even squeakier. And you have to do things when someone says, you must automate this, or you must do this. Sometimes you have to follow the letter of what they said, maybe not exactly what they meant, so that you can get the spirit of what they're actually trying to get, which is better stuff out the door. So there is not a career path really for people in test. They get to a certain level, everyone trusts them as a tester, they make them a test lead, then say, why don't you be a project manager? There isn't one because we don't value it. Developers have this problem to some extent as well, but they can fight their way around it. They can stay in architecture. They can stay in their expertise. You can stay in code forever and still get bigger salaries and higher prestige and all the stuff we all want and work on cool stuff. Testers have to quit testing to do something else. There is not a test craftsman profession. Bob was here, he yells about professionalism all the time. Testers don't have that because they're not treated like they have a profession. And this is the way to push it that way. A way to push it in the direction of having a real profession. If I'm hiring testers, I don't need experts in a particular automation UI framework. I want experts in testing. I want people that I can find out I know are good at finding weird bugs. Because I can find obvious bugs, or I don't let obvious bugs out in the first place. I don't need an expert for that. I need someone who will tell me my security holes before the hacker does that stole all the credit cards. I need someone who tells me it's too slow before the system crashes. A test craftsman would have reading, right? Just like we got a whole pile of books back there. We got like 2 books for testers because it doesn't exist yet. They might have apprenticeships. They might have mentors. They would have experts. There's only a few. Everyone can't work for Brian Merrick that's in test. Well, I mean, I suppose they could. It would mean he's doing quite well. Testing needs to be treated as a craft or a profession. You can call it what you like, just like development is. To do that, the level of what they're doing needs to be raised, both by us in development, stop giving them baby tasks because we keep breaking everything, and by them being able to raise their game to find more difficult defects. They will not be able to raise their game until we raise ours. You know, this whole talk has been about me being mad at the mistreatment of my wife. I'm not trying to make her job easier. The problem right now is her job is too easy and too menial. And it's insulting. I want it to be harder and fun and interesting and something people want to learn about and something people want to move into. All right. So that is the end of my yelling, which is good because I don't have much voice left. I am Eric Smith, a software craftsman at 8th Light for the time being. I am Peyton Rules on Twitter, so if we need a happy moment, note, today is Walter Payton's birthday. We should all be happy about that. He would be 60 if he was around today. That's me in the Rams jersey. And that is all I have to say. So are there any questions? Or are you all a little frightened now? I really am nice most of the time.